Rarely does a version number matter. On the surface, VS Code 1.133 is routine housekeeping, sticky scroll, an auto-refresh toggle, model selection tweaks. Underneath it is a specification, the Agent Host Protocol. MIT licensed, published as an open spec, and designed to do one specific thing: take the AI agent out of the editor, not out of the interface, out of the process. Microsoft is proposing that agent sessions should run in their own dedicated background host, separate from the extension host that has carried every VS Code extension for a decade. That is an architectural argument, not a feature. To understand why that matters, you have to understand where agents have been living. VS Code splits itself across processes. The window you see is one. Extensions run in another, the extension host, a node process the editor owns, starts, and tears down at will. Reload the window, the extension host restarts. Close the editor, it dies. That was acceptable when extensions were linters and formatters, work measured in milliseconds. Agents are different. An agent may run for 20 minutes, spawn sub-processes, edit dozens of files, wait on a test suite. Tying that to a Windows lifecycle was always a temporary arrangement. The Agent Host Protocol formalizes the separation. According to Microsoft's documentation, AHP defines a message contract between a client, the editor, and an agent host, a long-lived process that owns the session. Conversation state, tool invocations, file edits, permission prompts. The client attaches and detaches. The session persists independently. Crucially, the spec does not assume the client is VS Code, and it does not assume the agent is Copilot. It describes roles, not products. That framing is the entire point, and it is the part worth watching. Persistence sounds mundane until you have lost work to it. Anyone who has run a long agent task knows the failure mode. The window reloads after an update, the laptop sleeps, the VPN drops, and the session is gone. Context, plan, partial edits, all of it. With the agent in its own process, the editor becomes a viewer. Close it, reopen it, reattach. In principle, you could begin a refactor at a desk, walk away, and pick up the same live session from a different window. That is a different mental model entirely. Agent sessions as durable, addressable objects, closer to a terminal multiplexer than a chat panel. The remote case is where the design earns its keep. Remote SSH, dev containers, code spaces and dev tunnels all work by running an extension host on the remote machine while the interface stays local. Agents inherit every fragility of that link. A dropped connection has meant a dead session. If the agent host lives server-side and outlives the client, the network becomes something you reconnect to rather than something that destroys your work. For teams whose code, credentials, and compute never leave a controlled environment, regulated industries, large monorepos, that is not a convenience. It is the difference between usable and not. Microsoft has done this before, and the precedent is instructive. In 2016, it published the Language Server Protocol, a specification for decoupling language intelligence from the editor. Open, permissively licensed, and initially dismissed as a VS Code implementation detail. It is now the substrate for code intelligence across NeoVim, Emacs, Sublime, and beyond. The Debug Adapter Protocol followed the same path. The pattern is consistent: define the boundary, license it away, let competitors adopt it, and the boundary becomes the industry's default. AHP is that playbook applied to agents. AHP does not arrive on an empty field. Anthropic's Model Context Protocol, released in November 2024, standardizes how an agent reaches tools and data. Zed's Agent Client Protocol addresses the editor-to-agent seam, with adoption reported across NeoVim and several command-line agents. These layers are arguably complementary, MCP below, the client-agent boundary above, but the overlap is real, and the industry has not settled it. Which specification becomes the default remains an open question. History suggests it will be decided by adoption rather than technical merit, and Microsoft ships the editor with the largest installed base. The smaller changes are worth reading as signals. The release notes describe mixing Anthropic and Copilot models within a single Claude session, different models handling different turns inside one conversation. That quietly treats the model as a swappable component rather than the product itself. Sticky scroll arrives in the chat view, pinning the current turn's header as long transcripts scroll past, a small admission that agent output is now long enough to get lost in, and local HTML files can auto-refresh on save. None of these are headline features. All of them assume the editor is increasingly a place where you watch work happen. Some caution is warranted. An MIT license on a specification guarantees the right to implement it. It guarantees nothing about governance. Who decides version 2? LSP has been maintained largely by Microsoft, with the ecosystem following. Independent adoption by JetBrains, Z or others would be the real test, and that has not been demonstrated yet. There are also unresolved security questions in moving from a process the editor controls to a persistent host that survives it, permission handling, credential storage, and precisely what a detached agent is permitted to do unattended all deserve scrutiny before this becomes default behavior. Strip away the version number, and the argument is simple. If agents are going to run for hours, across machines, over unreliable networks, they cannot remain children of a user interface process. Someone was going to write that boundary down. Microsoft wrote it first, published it under a permissive license, and shipped a reference implementation to an enormous installed base. That combination has decided infrastructure questions before. Whether the agent-host protocol becomes a standard or a footnote should be visible within a year, not in Microsoft's announcements, but in whether anyone outside Redmond bothers to implement it.